So here we go again. I'm doing a short talk on Einstein and the ether about moving the goalposts. So the word ether seems to be spelt two different ways, but it's the general idea that light has, as a wave, has a medium. And I've talked about moving goalposts a lot in my other talks, and it's about changing things or modifying things or adding extra things to a theory. And now I'm going to talk about it in relation to the idea of the ether. So this is James Clerk Maxwell. He came up with the electromagnetic theory, and this is what Einstein's working from. And if you read what he got here, he's telling you the ether exists. And then with Einstein in 1905, in his famous paper on special relativity, this is what Einstein says. The introduction of a luminescent ether will prove to be superfluous inasmuch as the view here to be developed will not require an absolutely stationary space provided with special properties, nor assign a velocity vector to a point of the empty space in which electromagnetic processes take place. I'm quoting from an English translation of his paper, which is not necessarily a very good translation, but you get the general idea. Einstein is discarding the ether in 1905. So this is what Einstein says about the ether in 1920 on his talk about ether and relativity, and it's not very clear, but he seems to be changing his mind from what he's saying in 1905, and he's bringing back the ether. So how does the physics establishment respond to Einstein changing his mind about ether? And it's explained by such people as Philip Frank in his book on Einstein. According to Philip Frank, after dealing with Einstein's popularity with the masses in 1920, he says, the first instance of the unscientific publicity was Einstein's lecture at the ancient Honourable University Leiden in Holland. There he lectured before 1,400 students of this famous Centre of Physical Science on the title was taught Ether and the Relativity Theory. This lecture led to many misinterpretations, and by interpretation he presumably means he's trying to find excuses to ignore what Einstein's reinstating the ether. Frank continues, Einstein, who had previously suggested the term ether be dropped so as to prevent the rise of any idea that one is dealing with a material medium, discussed another proposal, namely the word ether be used for curved space, or what amounts to the same thing for the gravitational field present in space. So Einstein's bringing back a version of ether in 1920. Frank then gives the response what Einstein got to this idea. Einstein's new proposal irritated some physicists and made others happy. Quite a few were unable to differentiate between a proposal to use the word in a certain sense and an assertion of a physical fact. They said, and this is presumably what Frank thinks they were saying, for a long time efforts were made to convince us of the sensational fact that the ether had been got rid of, and now Einstein himself reintroduces it. This man is not to be taken seriously. He contradicts himself constantly. And so basically summarised of that is Einstein's introduction of the ether led to confusion. Einstein got rid of the ether in 1905, and now in 1920 he's wanting to bring it back, and its response is confusion. So we have the movement of the goalposts as regards ether as follows. Before Einstein 1905, Maxwell and others like him were saying there was an ether. Einstein 1905 is discarding ether. Einstein 1920 is causing confusion by reintroducing the ether, and that's the state of affairs in physics to this day, confusion. Many are taught there is no ether as per Einstein 1905, but there are others saying there is an ether, which is the same as what Einstein was saying in 1920, but not necessarily meaning the same type of ether that Einstein wanted in 1920. So what we have is moving the goalposts, changing things, and that's all great. It caused a great deal of confusion. So we have this article, for example, in 2019 from New Scientist, which suggests bringing back the ether, and the title of the article is "Einstein killed the ether, now the idea is put back to save relativity." And it goes on to say, the luminescent ether has been a byword for failed ideas. Now it is being revived to explain dark matter, dark energy, and potentially unify physics. So this idea of Einstein rejecting the ether in 1905, too many people are going by it, and maybe it's causing the confusion we have at the moment about how to explain dark matter, dark energy, and other things like that. So the mainstream is wanting to just keep certain things swept under the carpet like this. When people are taught physics, they're usually avoided from telling you that there's a great deal of confusion about the ether. It's usually probably what is taught is what Einstein was saying in 1905 of discarding the ether. They don't go on to the next thing that Einstein said in 1920 about bringing it back. They try to sweep that under the carpet when they're teaching it. So that's it. That's the end of my talk. Thank you. Cheers.